and welcome to Season 4, Episode 4 of KittyCatGO Live, where we discuss various topics related to cat adventure, travel, training, and enrichment. I'm your host, Emily Hall, and tonight we're talking about a vital component of your cat's daily life, playing with your cat. The whys, hows, and more. Because believe it or not, there is some strategy involved. If you're watching with us tonight or on the replay, be sure to say hello in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Questions are encouraged along the way as well. Our special guest for the evening is Dr. Mikel Delgado. Dr. Mikel Maria Delgado is a certified applied animal behaviorist and certified cat behavior consultant who has been working with cats professionally for over 20 years. She worked as a cat behavior specialist at the San Francisco SPCA for 8 years before co-founding Feline Minds, where she offers assistance for cat owners, animal shelters, and corporations. Mikel completed her PhD in animal behavior and cognition at UC Berkeley and was a postdoc at the UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine, where she researched the social and feeding behaviors of cats and the health and behavior of orphaned neonatal kittens. She is the author of the book Play with Your Cat and co-authored the 2017 book Total Cat Mojo with Jackson Galaxy. Mikel lives in Sacramento, California with her boyfriend and their 3 cats, Ruby, Coriander, and Professor Scribbles. All right. Hi.
Hi. Hi, Emily. Hi,
Thank
everybody.
you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah, me too. I have been reading your book. I've been highlighting and tabbing and taking notes. And so I'm so excited to have you on to talk about all this stuff because it is chock full of awesome information. And I'm super excited for people to hear more about it and to learn more about playing with our cats, because I think that's something, you know, we all can sometimes easily overlook or not really put a lot of thought into. And from what I've learned from your book is that's not true, right? It's really essential, and there's so much that goes into it. And so I'm excited.
Yay. Yeah, no, I'm excited too. Obviously, excited to have the book out, and I really want as many people as possible to read it and learn about playing with their cats. So super happy to be talking about it.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your cats? I know I just read your amazing bio, but I know people like to hear more especially about the kitties. Everyone likes to hear about the kitties.
Who doesn't want to hear about kitties? Yeah. So my 3 cats are COVID adoptions. So my last cat, Clarabelle, passed away in 2020. And then we decided to get 3 sisters. So our cats are sisters. Nice. They are very playful. So they were kittens when we got them. And that was definitely, play has always been kind of a passion topic of mine, but it was really nice to kind of test out my own advice with kittens. And they're funny, they're quirky, they are playful, they love hanging out in their catio all day, and they're a fun little bunch.
That's awesome. I love that they're sisters. That's kind of unusual to have a bunch of siblings.
Yeah, I think so as a cat behavior consultant, I help a lot of people who are having difficulties introducing a new cat into their home with cats already, and so I'm a little bit traumatized by that work, and so I'm like, I'm just going to adopt 3 cats that know each other all at once. And there's some research showing that cats that grow up together or are siblings tend to stay friendlier with one another throughout lifetime. So I figured I was giving them a chance of being good companions to one another. The irony is that they're not they're not really best friends. They're very much like siblings. They tolerate each other, but they don't really want to cuddle or anything. It's they play a little bit, but they're all pretty independent of one another. So it's been a very interesting learning experience for me to have siblings, because they also have some similar traits that I just assume are because they're related or growing up in the same environment. So it's just kind of funny to see their personalities can be very similar in some ways, but then they still have these very individual differences. So it's fun.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I can't say that I've ever had sibling cats before.
Yeah, so it's good and bad, right? Like I said, you don't have to introduce them, but if one of them has a weird trait, maybe all of them have it. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, you obviously have a very long experience and career working with cats. What led you into that? How did you get into being a cat behavior consultant and animal behaviorist?
Yeah, it was definitely not intentional at all. I was I was working at a health food cooperative and I was playing in a bunch of bands. So my life really revolved around punk and cooperative spaces. And I started working or volunteering at an animal shelter after one of my cats passed away, at the urging of a friend who was volunteering. And he was like, "Oh, you should really come volunteer with kitties." And when I was there, there was like this special ward of cats that was like you had to have special training to visit because they were the behavior cats. And I became very interested, like, when you can't do something, you want to do it more. And I was like, well, what do I need to do to visit these cats? And what I learned was that these were cats who were having difficulty adjusting to the shelter environment. So they were fearful or biting and scratching, maybe had a history of problems in a previous home. And there were trained staff who were working with them and also helping adopters and helping people from the public who were having behavior problems with their cats. So as soon as I could, I started volunteering with that program. And basically, I volunteered there so much that when there was a job opening, they offered it to me. I basically just made myself a nuisance until they wanted to hire me because I really was like, what? You can do this? Like, I just had no idea. I mean, I'd always loved cats, but it never really occurred to me that you could work with them or work with anything related to animal behavior. And so I worked there for 8 years, decided that I wanted to go back to school because I'd actually dropped out of college many years before. And so I decided I wanted to study animal behavior in a more formal way, just so that I would have a better, kind of deeper understanding of both the theoretical aspects of it and methods and what's really happening and how animals think and learn, and also just being able to like apply that learning to helping people with their pets. So I stopped working at the shelter and went back to school, and that turned into like a huge endeavor of eventually getting a PhD. And so, yeah, it kind of just started at the shelter, and then I always found a way to fit it into my life because even when I went back to school, I was doing consulting. So I was helping people with their pets and just never stopped doing that. So today, I wear several different hats. So, I wrote the book and I still do cat behavior consulting. And I'm also a part time researcher for an animal welfare lab. So I kind of do a lot of different things, really all about cats and animals. Um, but yeah, so it's kind of like I've pieced together this weird career, but it's definitely not normal. It's not like I think what I envisioned my life would be like when I was a kid or anything. So, but it's pretty great. So I really enjoy both the kind of mental stimulation I get from learning and doing research, and also just helping people with their cats is very rewarding.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I just recently got a certification in cat training and I've been volunteering
Nice.
at my local shelter, and
Excellent.
I look forward to it every week. It really is just incredibly rewarding to see the difference that can be made in cats' lives who are struggling, with behavior issues and stuff. So,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And when you can share those skills with their humans too, which
mhm.
you may find yourself doing in the near future, it's giving them the tools to help their cat have a better life as well. So, yeah, but I do think like a shelter is an amazing place to get so much experience with cats. It's just a really important. I think everyone should do some time volunteering in an animal shelter, keeping in mind that there's a lot of stressors involved, and I did get burned out and had to leave. And it's just there's a lot of maybe not so much the animals, but the human element that can be a little bit stressful. There's like management issues and
Mhm.
human issues, but the animals are always really amazing.
Yeah. Um, so we talked a little bit about your book that you just came out with, Play with Your
Yeah.
Cat. What inspired you to write a book about this topic?
Yeah, so I had a book agent before I had a book idea, and so a friend introduced me to this book agent who likes to work with scientists who write books for a general public. And so, she's like, "Oh, there's tons of space in the book world for cat books." And I was like, I just don't want to write another book that's like, here's all the things that are wrong with your cat and how to fix them. Because there's some really good books that already tell people how to help their cat's behavior as far as like, oh, litter box problems and oh, cat scratching my furniture or whatever. So I kept getting stuck on like, um, I don't know, what book does the world need? And I'd been obviously like when I work with clients, a lot of people say, oh, my cat's not interested in toys. oh, he doesn't play. And every single time someone would say that to me, I'd basically be like, step aside, give me the cat toy. And they would always be like, oh my God, we've never seen him play like this before. And I really wasn't doing anything magical. I was just doing what I'd learned from working with cats in the shelter. But it was really like they just had no idea kind of what their cat liked as far as play or how to move a toy. And, or even thinking kind of like, oh, we're enacting like a hunting experience. Maybe I can draw some inspiration from that. So it was partly just from experience of working with people and just hearing over and over again, oh, my cat doesn't play, as an excuse for not playing with their cat, but then proving them wrong. And having that have a really positive impact on their relationship with their cat. And I also saw how play was really positive for like fearful cats in a shelter or cats who were like a little bit cage, frustrated. So we could really help them get some of that energy out of their system through play. At the same time, I was kind of doing some work academically around play. So I did a paper with a friend of mine, Julie Hecht, who is doing her PhD on cat play. And so we're friends and we talk science. And so she was like, oh, we just started talking about cat play. And then I was like, we should really write like a scientific review of cat play because nobody's kind of consolidated all of the research that's been done. And a lot of the research is quite old. But so we wrote this scientific review, and it's a very boring process. It's like you read a billion scientific papers and you try to synthesize all the information and turn it into something that is cohesive and useful to the world. And when we did that, it was really fun, and I learned a lot about play from a more like scientific perspective and not so much the experiential. And I was like, it'd be really cool to turn this into a book for cat owners. And so that is really where the idea was born. It was like, okay, I can have it half be like the research and the science and kind of the why cats behave the way they do, and half of it could be more applied, where it's like, here's how to pick a toy, here's how to move a toy, here's how you play with a cat who's blind, here's how you play when you have 3 cats. So I really wanted to meld those two things together in a way that was hopefully really fun to read. Like, I'm really interested in science communication, I think, because like I wasn't like intending to be a scientist or be like a doctor or anything. And so for me, it's really important to be able to explain to people without big words what science is and why it's important. So I really wanted to bring that to this book, where it's not dumbing it down, it's just making it more interesting and digestible, and hopefully people can take the book and get something cool out of it and then do something with their cat right after and like see results.
Yeah, well, I can definitely say that you succeeded in making the book accessible. Like, as I've been reading it, before I started reading it, I went into it not knowing what to expect as far as like language and terminology.
Sure.
I was like, is this going to be like a really sciencey kind of thing
Yeah.
that I'm going to have a dictionary, and like,
Yeah.
that as I was reading, I was like, oh wow, this is like so simple and accessible and easy to understand. So you succeeded.
Yay. Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's really the most important thing, is to communicate effectively, because that's going to make it more fun to read. And of course, I was very fortunate that my friend Lily Chin was willing to let me hire her to do the illustrations for the book, which I think really add a nice element to the book, because her illustrations are just beautiful and really good at communicating behavior in a very cute but realistic way. So I liked that it was also going to be kind of a cute book.
Yeah, it definitely is. I love all the little illustrations and the cute little cartoon cats.
Yeah, they're nice.
Yeah. Um, so I guess the crux of your whole book is why play is so important, right? So
Yeah.
why is play so
Yeah.
important?
Yeah, play is important. When I think about cat welfare, and so that's really their ability to experience natural behaviors and have a good quality of life, have more positive experiences than negative ones, and have some sense of like choice and control in their environment, then we're really thinking about like, well, okay, we're keeping cats in our homes, and certainly some people take their cats for adventures, or they let their cats go outside, right? Or I have a catio, but a lot of our cats primarily live in a pretty small environment. So in some ways, there's parallels with other captive animals, like animals in zoos and sanctuaries. And that's a very contentious thing to say. I tried to write that in a scientific paper once, and someone got very like, cats are not captive animals. I think it really depends. So, but when we think about that, it's like, what are the tenets of like good welfare for captive animals? And one of them is the ability to express natural behaviors. And the natural behavior we're mimicking with play is predation. So if you look at the research around hunting behavior and play behavior in cats, there's a lot of overlap in what it looks like, and there's a lot of overlap in what inspires it. So for example, cats are more likely to hunt when they're hungry. They're also more likely to play when they're hungry. They're more likely to hunt when the prey is small, and they're more likely to play when the toy is not too large and threatening. So from observing all these things about cats' behavior, we can say that essentially play is just a type of predation. It's just being directed toward a toy instead of a mouse or bird.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's giving our cats the ability to express that behavior without hopefully killing any birds or mice. I mean, I try not to, everyone is responsible for how they raise their cats. And I do keep my own cats indoors. They have a catio, so they get to spend a lot of time with outdoor access, but it's controlled. But I do think that there's an increasing movement around the world to keep more cats indoors. Certainly in the US, it's more typical than in like the UK, but in Australia, there's like some serious legislation that's going to basically lead to a lot of feral cats being killed because they're really trying to eradicate invasive predators. It's a very controversial topic, and not all of us agree with the methods, but the solution to that is going to be a lot more people keeping their cats indoors. So I think we just have to be conscious of how we can make that indoor experience more rewarding. And I think that's really what your podcast and your whole social media presence is about, right? Is giving our cats these experiences that are enriching to them, that are mentally stimulating. And so I think play is one really kind of basic, no-brainer, easy to do, in your home. And hopefully your cats will love it because you're going to use all these cool techniques that I talk about in my book.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, KittyCatGO obviously is focused heavily on the controlled outdoor adventures, going out on a harness and leash. But, that's not for every cat. And not every person is able to do that, or even on a daily basis, So like you said, play is easy to do. Anyone can do it. And it, you can incorporate it into your cat's daily life a lot more easily than going out for hikes and walks and stuff like that. So that's what's so great about it, is it's so accessible.
Yeah, and it's, the other thing too is it's, relatively speaking, a low time commitment. If you think about how much time cats spend hunting, they're not like running around like little maniacs for 10 hours a day, right? It's like very short bursts of activity. So we can also play with them in short bursts. So you can play with them a few times a day for just a couple of minutes at a time. And in fact, a new study just came out, and it put little trackers on cats, and they're active like 45 minutes a day. So they're not like, they conserve a lot of energy. So they don't need necessarily hours of playtime. I mean, some cats need a lot. So I wouldn't say all cats can do fine with 5 minutes of play a day. But for a lot of adult cats, 5 to 10 minutes a day is going to be a great benefit to them, and not a huge like investment of time for the people.
Yeah, absolutely. I know everyone these days is so busy, and but finding that five minutes, can make all the difference.
You can do it. You can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just think of all the time I spend doom scrolling, and I'm like, I could be doing something much better.
Yeah, that's right. I just wasted 15 minutes of my life watching Instagram reels. I could have been playing with
Exactly.
Yeah. So you mentioned how play gives cats the ability to act on those natural hunting instincts, and that's a big part of why play is so important. As domesticated cats, though, it's interesting that they still have those hunting instincts so ingrained in them. Can you speak a little bit as to why that is?
Yeah, so obviously cats are domesticated, like that's not under debate, although I think, how domesticated they are is perhaps a little less certain. And when we domesticated cats, we interacted with them much differently than we did dogs, right? So with dogs, we really selected them for very specific behaviors. So some dogs have been selected for really extreme versions of their hunting sequence, right? Like pointers or retrievers, where we're asking them to do very specific behaviors. With cats, we really haven't said change your behavior, except to like be a little more cuddly and friendly with humans. Like that's kind of gotten them pretty far. But through that whole period of 9, 10,000 years that we've been interacting with them closely, we have still said like, hey, go out and hunt, like fend for yourself. Like lots of cats still have that ability to survive without human support. And in fact, cats have been incredibly successful in all parts of the globe. So we know that as a species, they're very just like able to adapt to almost anything. So there's that. And really, again, we haven't asked them to change. So we've never selected them for less hunting behavior. In fact, most cats still choose their own mating partners. So we're not really controlling their breeding. So they get to basically evolve with very little changes in their behavior from their wild ancestors. So hunting is still very much an instinct. You can see it if a fly gets in your house. I mean, I'm not going to lie and say that a toy is as good as that fly that came into your house, because I know when a fly comes in the house, it's like the cats are on high alert in a way that, other things do not get them nearly that worked up. But it is just there. And, perhaps in the future, we'll, decide we want to selectively breed cats for being less wild. I think a lot of us who love cats kind of appreciate the elements of them that are still pretty, not like completely wild, but they have these instincts that kind of make them more intriguing to me, at least. So yeah, I don't necessarily want a cat who's just going to be a couch potato and like not have drives and instincts and things that they get excited about. So to me, the obvious answer is just to draw out those instincts and give them outlets for them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I about having the cat that's interactive and getting to watch them engage in those natural instincts. It's I don't know, it makes every day interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We have a question from a viewer. Terry says, what exactly is play? I walk my cats on leash, strive for multiple enriching activities every day, teach challenging behaviors as well as regular care. I feel like I'm not very playful.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not saying that play is the only way to enrich your cat's life, but like just like I wouldn't say you should play and not take your cat for a walk, I wouldn't say you should take your cat for a walk and not play, right? So I feel like there's lots of really amazing things that we can do for our cats that help tap into their needs, whether it's a need for mental stimulation or kind of problem solving opportunities like a food puzzle might provide. But for me, play is really about the we would call it pseudo predatory behavior. So really eliciting the hunting instinct. So if we look at what that means for cats, it's the stalking, it's the watching, it's the pouncing, it's the feeling the prey or toy with all of their senses that they use for hunting, right? So with their paws, cats have these amazing whiskers on their face and their paws to help them detect movement of prey. So to me, playing with your cat entails a human holding a toy that's, a wand with something dangling off the end, and a cat who's somehow interacting with that. Now, how the cat will interact with that may vary depending on the cat. So a young or more active cat is probably going to be, running around and doing backflips and grasping the toy and kicking it and biting it. And a more, mellow or older cat might just be watching the toy or maybe batting it gently or maybe just, kind of feeling it and while they're laying down, right? They're not as active. But to me, we're really trying to tap into both the physical benefits and the cognitive benefits and emotional benefits. So, just like enrichment is, it has cognitive benefits for animals. So it's protective of the brain, prevents degeneration. Obviously, exercise has stress reducing properties for a lot of us, like us and other animals. So going for a run, you get that, endorphin rush after. And then the long-term effects of that are generally considered beneficial too. So for me, we are trying to provide both the physical and the mental aspects of play, but it is going to look different for every kitty. And so one thing I really try to think it across in the book is like, there's not one set recipe for how to play with a cat. And so I'm really trying to give people the tools to experiment and like see what their cat likes and see what they like, and also try lots of different things and have fun and kind of, enhance their relationship with their cat that way. But hopefully that helps you understand. So for me, play is pseudo-predatory behavior, where we're really bringing out that hunting sequence in some form. Great question, though.
Yeah, I love what you say about how play can look different for every cat, right? Every cat's going to have different preferences, and I find that to be so true. My husband and I have 6 cats.
Oh, nice.
And each one of them, when we bring out the wand toy, we usually have group play sessions, and I kind of take turns because they all respond differently to different movements of the wand toy. So for one cat, they might like to lay on their back and like bat at the toy, and then for another one, they like it when I swish it up in the air and they jump after it, and then others like to chase it as I drag it across the ground. They all have their different versions and varieties of play, and it's really fun to figure out what those are.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is, and I mean, the question, they did say they didn't feel very playful, and I get that, and I mean, I'll say sometimes that play is it is a little bit of a chore. Like, I'm not gonna say every day. It's like my cats are like, oh, this is the best, and we're all having a great time. Like, sometimes I'm really like moving a toy really slowly for 10 minutes just to get like one really good pounce, and that's fine too. But and I don't know if she was saying she doesn't feel playful with her cat, but to me, like, play is also good for us, and so that's something I bring up in the book early, is just like, taking the time to like do something. And it's funny, like the scientific literature about play kind of defines it as something that's not important for survival. Like, it's like just something animals do in their spare time or whatever. And to me, there are benefits of being playful, right? So like, I mean, we talked about this before the show started, like, we're both musicians, right? And so there's the kind of creative excitement you get from playing music, and maybe there's nothing productive that comes out of that 2-hour jam session or whatever, but you're really enjoying it. Or I like playing board games, I like playing video games. So I think that for people who are not maybe as free or playful themselves, it can be a little challenging to kind of figure out why this is important for their cat. But I'm hoping that maybe the opposite will happen, and you find that playing with your cat makes you just feel more playful and want to have fun in general.
Yeah, so that kind of leads really well into my next question. In the book, you describe lots of different moves and methods of using the wand toys to get your cat to interact. Can you share a few of those with us?
Sure. I'm like, do I have a toy handy? So yeah, I do have, and I did try to illustrate most of the moves or Lily illustrated them. I didn't, but and it's not an exhaustive list of moves either. It's just some of my power moves that I find tend to elicit responses from cats. And I will say my number one, if all else fails, try moving the toy really slowly under like a piece of tissue paper or a towel, or a sheer fun for cats, which is a really great fabric that you can use for play, or a ripple rug. That's another great toy prop that I use a lot. Yeah, so I think one mistake people make when they're moving a toy is they actually move it way too fast. So when cats are young, you can kind of whip the wand around and the cat's doing backflips and chasing it. But that doesn't work after a few years. The cat's just like, because kittens are kind of anything that moves might be prey. They're like learning.
Uh-oh.
Oh, this isn't a toy. Sorry, they know this isn't prey. They think, they're like, this isn't moving like a bird would move. So as we are working with adult cats, we do have to just move the toy in a more calculated manner. So moving the toy like a bird would move, like a mouse would move. So I'm into like kind of with a feather wand, like kind of making it bob like a bird would. So, when a bird's pecking at seed, I watch animals a lot. I have a bird feeder in my backyard, so I spend a lot of time watching birds. And when we have a lot of mourning doves, and they're kind of pecking in the ground, and so I like to move the toy, kind of bobbing it like a little bird pecking at seed on the ground, and then maybe I'll fly away a little bit. So that's one other way to move the toy. Thinking like, I always start with like, what prey am I today, right? Am I a mouse? Am I a lizard? Am I a bird? Am I a fish? Am I a bug? And trying to move the toy like those prey animals would move. So it's always helpful to kind of observe animals. And I do talk in the book specifically, like, here's what mice do, and here's what lizards do. And, flies like, insects like light, and they like windows, and they like to be behind curtains, and mice like to, hide in rugs and underneath things, and some animals climb walls. So you can really kind of, imitate whichever prey animal of your choice. Let me see if I can find another movement that I feel like, oh, I should really discuss this one. Because again, do you have specific toy movements? Okay, yeah, like around the corner and out of sight. So this is another kind of power move, which is like, use a doorway or a piece of furniture to kind of slowly move the toy around the corner. Cats love it when something moves out of sight. And this, again, if you think about their hunting behavior, they're very naturally attracted to crevices where their prey hang out. I know this from personal experience because I lived in an apartment that had a mouse problem.
Oh
And
no.
there was a hole there was a hole in the wall, and my cat would stare at that hole all day, like hours. Nothing was happening, but he was just watching that hole in the wall just in case. And so then when I was reading this book by Paul Lehausen, who was kind of an early ethologist who studied animal behavior, and he wrote this book about cats, he talked about how cats are very attracted to crevices because that's where, they like to fish out, mice or birds from burrows and holes in trees and stuff. So there's kind of some natural instincts that we can take advantage of. So I think when a toy moves just out of sight, it becomes much more exciting. So yeah, just moving like a peacock feather around a corner. Suddenly the cat has to know what happened. So they're going to like run around. Yeah. So yeah, under the rug, those are a few of my power moves. But I think again, like, try to fly around like a bird, land, act like a bird, act like a mouse, act like a
Yeah.
bug.
Yeah, you talking about your cats wanting to hang out in front of the mouth hole makes me remember at our first apartment that my husband and I had when we first got married. At the time we had 3 cats, and one of them would always sit on the kitchen counter and stare at the sink drain.
Oh yeah.
And I was always like, "What is coming out of the sink drain?" She would
Yeah.
stake it out and sit there like for long periods of time, and I'm like, "Should I be concerned?"
Concerned? I know. That actually, there's been a few times where my cats have suddenly been very obsessed with the bathtub, and I'm like, this is not a good sign. This
Yeah.
means there's something under the house or in the wall. I don't want to know what it is.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
yeah, they're very perceptive. But and that really also speaks to the fact that we're so focused on vision because that is our predominant sense, that we're not even thinking, like, when people are like, what is he staring at when he's staring at the wall? It's like, no, he's smelling and hearing things. Like, they're not looking, they're looking at the wall just by chance, but their ears and nose are telling them there's a mouse behind that wall. So we're just so kind of trapped in our human brain that we forget that they perceive things very differently.
Yeah. Another question from a viewer. Do cats stop playing at a certain age?
Not necessarily. So research shows that they are less active with age, and there's kind of some dips in activity. I don't remember the specific ages, but I think it's like at 5, and then at 8 you'll see kind of significant decrease in reported activity. But I'll say my last cat, Clarabelle, she passed away from cancer when she was 16 and a half. But we were playing like almost up until she got very sick, which was just a week or 2 before she died. So there's no reason for a cat to stop playing. I think what changes is how they play. And that's where people should, like I said, expect that maybe your cat's not going to get off the couch to play. They're going to lay down while they're playing, but they're still playing, kind of bring the play to them and let them touch the toy and bite the toy and bat at it. But I've definitely had clients with senior cats who were quite playful, still doing the backflips and jumping up on the cat tree. So do not assume that just because your cat is old that they will not play.
What would you say to someone who says that their cat doesn't play, like regardless of age, a younger cat or even an older cat? Like you said, even you had a lot of clients who'd say, "Oh, my cat doesn't like to play." What can you do about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely trying some new toys. So there's research showing that cats do get bored of the same toy. So you have to rotate the toys to keep them interested. You have to make sure you're moving the toy, in a way that makes sense to your cat. So sometimes when I worked at the shelter, I would see a lot of people We'd often people wanted to meet the cats, and so we'd give them a toy to play with the cat because we didn't want them to play with their hands. So we just found it was easier to hand them a toy to play with the cat instead of saying, "Hey, don't play with your hands," because sometimes people get defensive when you try to tell them what to do. So, but sometimes the people would like take the toy and like start tapping the cat with the toy, or they'd like move it in the cat's face, and then I'm like, okay, now we got to tell them they're not playing right. So so you just want to make sure again you're moving the toy like prey. You're using a toy that works for your cat. So maybe if your cat's kind of shy, you want to use a smaller toy. Like, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a toy. It could be a shoelace, right? Like, it's like sometimes the things that my cats play with are green beans. So like, I really like there's, as long as it's safe for my cat to interact with and I'm in, controlling their interactions with it, there's really nothing I won't try to play with my cats with. I'm always sticking stuff on the end of a string, like whether it's a piece of paper or I just actually opened a bag of pasta yesterday and it had this tie that's kind of made out of this husky kind of rope. So I'm going to try that as a toy later. I used a mesh bag, like a tiny mesh bag that some purple potatoes came in. I used that as a toy. We used to call it the purple ghost. The cats really loved it. But then they got bored of it and we threw it away. So the nice thing about found items is that you can usually recycle or compost or throw them away after. I'm sure everyone out there is thinking of something weird that their cat likes to play with, like juice rings or Q-tips, which are not really safe for your cat to play with, so I don't really encourage that. But there's always like that household object that everyone's like, oh, my cat loves something. So maybe that's where you start, and you tie it to a string, and you start moving it around. You try some new movements, you try some new toys, you try moving slower. Like I'm always telling you, slower, slower, slower. I often refer to play as kitty foreplay because you guys, build up to the reward and take your time. So, and I hope that someday I have more like instructional videos that maybe I can help people with. But I'm hoping that they'll read the book and learn something from it and try some new things with their cat. So never give up. Like I said, worst case scenario, try moving the stick end of the toy under a towel. Most cats cannot resist it.
Yeah, so that actually leads into a viewer's question who asked about their cat attacking their feet under the covers. Is that considered asking for a friend?
Yeah, so I would consider it play. I wouldn't necessarily consider it appropriate play. So as a cat behaviorist, I try to really discourage playing with body parts just because it can set a bad precedent that maybe you don't mind when your cat's a kitten, but you don't like so much when the cat is bigger and older, or maybe you don't mind, but your partner does, or, I think the worst is when someone calls me because they've been playing rough with their cat the cat's entire life and now they're having a baby and they don't want the baby to get bitten, and so now it's like, okay, you have to undo like 5 years worth of bad training. So what I would call that is like playful aggression, and that's kind of, I don't know how this person feels about having their feet attacked under the covers, but yes, it's a playful behavior. It's a pseudo predatory behavior. It's just being directed towards your feet instead of toys. You could instead direct your cat to a toy moving under the blankets instead of your feet. If your cat is doing this and you don't want them to, or they're doing it a lot, then I definitely have some tips in the book about working with playful aggression. So a lot of it is playing with them more with toys. I'm a big fan of other types of enrichment for these cats, like clicker training and harness walking and all of that. And I do a lot. So one of my cats actually, she's not cured of her playful aggression. She's 4 now, but she's still, she likes to give hugs, is how we refer to it in our house. But it's always when she's kind of wound up and wants to play, and I'm not paying attention to what's going on, and I'm like getting dressed or for work or whatever, and she like is suddenly, I see she's got like the spirals in her eyeballs and looking at me like my leg is juicy and tasty, and then she's like grabbing around me. So she used to be a lot worse, and so what I did then was I always carried small toys around in my pockets, and anytime she was looking at me anyway, I would just toss the toy in the opposite direction so that she would learn that if I was walking around the house, she would run in the other direction for the toy, and that was quite fun. And that really put a big dent in her playful aggression. And I've done a lot of work with her with training her to like stay and sit calmly at other times. So she's made a lot of progress. She's sleeping behind me right now.
Oh, which one is that?
That's Coriander, and she's a nice little cat. She's very trainable, but she gets pretty frisky. So it's something I've had to work with myself. So I would just say, if you don't want your cat to do that, like, don't encourage it, and try to play with them more. Maybe play with them more before bed. Maybe feed them a snack before bedtime so that they go to bed tired. And certainly, if you're having like serious behavior issues with your cat, I always recommend working with a professional who can help you problem solve something specific to your situation. So come up with a plan that's going to work for you and your family.
Yeah, awesome. So you've shared a lot about the strategies we can use in a play session with your cat. In your book, you also talk about structuring the play session and like how to start it, the middle, how to end it, how long it should be, all of that. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think we can treat it to an extent like we do an exercise session for ourselves, right? There's the warm up. Like, you don't just like immediately start running at full sprint. Like, you kind of walk or jog a little bit before you kind of pick up the pace, or you're going to do a warm up before you start weightlifting. So with your cats, you might want to introduce the toy a little bit slowly and then build up to more cardiovascular activity. Especially if you have a young active cat, then you can incorporate vertical space into your play. So maybe have them go up and down a cat tree, jump from one piece of furniture to another, incorporate cardboard boxes or bags or whatever to keep them active. And then the important part is the cool down. So it doesn't have to be like hours of cool down. It can just be a couple minutes. But basically, when I'm wrapping up a play session, I like to move the toy slowly for a little bit, kind of let the toy die, let the cat play with the toy while it's not moving for a little bit, and then take it away and then give them a snack or a meal. So keeping in mind, as I mentioned before, that cats are more likely to play and hunt when they're hungry. So we can kind of take advantage of their natural behavioral cycle, play with them, and then feed them. And then there's kind of the adage of, eat. I can't remember now. It's like the whole eat, play, sleep, or whatever. But I think it's the other way around. It's like play, eat, and then sleep. So there's some grooming in there too. So really just trying to help our cats express that natural behavioral cycle. As far as how long a play session needs to be, it really depends on the cat. And I would say anything from like 3 to 30 minutes is probably fine for most cats. And it really just depends on how active they are. I mean, young cats, you can play with them for a really long time. And if you have really young cats, if you're getting kittens, get 2 or 3 so they can play with each other. So, I encourage people with young cats to have them have buddies when possible, just because then it does take some of the pressure off the person. I'm not saying you shouldn't still play with them, but it's like the difference between having to play with them like an hour or 2 a day versus 30 minutes a day. I think, it's worth it to have that second kitten. Plus, you get twice the cuddles.
Yeah, who doesn't love? Yeah, kitten cuddles.
Yeah.
My next question is about laser pointers, and actually we have a person in the comments asking about laser pointers too. I know they can be a little controversial. And Terry says that whenever they use the laser pointers, the cats have a hard time understanding that the game is over. So what are your opinions on laser toys, and is there a way to use them successfully?
Yes. Can you laze responsibly? So I'm not like a hardcore anti-laser pointer person. And whenever I get asked about it, I end up like talking way more about laser pointers than I want to. So first of all, I'll say there's not as strong evidence for laser pointers having detrimental effects on cats like there is in dogs. That doesn't mean that there aren't any, but there's just a lot more studies of dogs who get like light obsessive, where they can't stop looking for the light. It sounds like this person who asked the question is maybe having a little bit of that experience with their cat. And one of my cats is very, like, if she sees like a light reflecting off my Fitbit, she's like, gets really excited and like googly headed and stuff. And so I feel like she's kind of borderline compulsive with the light. And so I think, whereas my other 2 cats are just like, whatever. So one, yes, I think some cats might have a negative reaction to the laser pointer, but it's hard to say whether or not that's how we use it. So if you are going to use a laser pointer, first of all, I don't recommend that being your only toy. And I think for a lot of people that is their only toy. And it's because people don't want to get off the couch. They want to sit on their ass and like, make the cat run around, right? And for me, play is ideally a bit more interactive. Like you're moving around, your cat's moving around. And so I do encourage people to get off the couch. I kind of tell a story in the book about how I kind of had that realization myself. So if you do use a laser, it should be just part of your play, not the entirety of your play. You should make the light move like a bug would. So the other thing I think that happens is people will like point the laser up a wall and then just turn it off. And it's like the bug disappears, right? And so that's not how bugs act. So we want to make sure, like, if you're using a laser, like make it go under a door or behind something and then turn it off. So at least it's following like the laws of physics that our cats, still live in the same physical world as we do. And it's interesting too, like the light doesn't look red to them because they can't see red. So it's just a glowing light. So I think it's kind of funny to think about how they perceive it. And then I do like to have people like switch to a physical toy or toss a treat and have the cat get that instead to kind of, again, bring them back to reality because, I do think they can't touch it, they can't smell it. And so that might be part of the frustration is just that it's obviously something moving around, but they can only detect it with one of their senses. And really for hunting is a multisensorial experience. So to me, it's just a very limited thing. And again, I've spent way more time talking about laser pointers than I usually like to, because then I just feel like I'm giving a lot of, and I do talk about this in the book too, but I'd say limit it, use it responsibly, make it look somewhat realistic and with a real toy and a treat, and monitor your cat for those kind of problematic signs. And if your cat really can't kind of come down from that like laser obsession, then they just might not be the best candidate for that kind of play. I will say some cats, it is really the best way to get them running around. So that's why I don't dismiss it completely. Like sometimes it's a good entry level into play, but it really should not be where the play ends.
Yeah, I love the idea of at the end of the laser pointer session, tossing a treat or toys that they have some, they can win, they can get their prey, they can, end their hunt.
Yeah, and I think people don't, again, it's because people don't think about play as the hunting experience and like what would happen and like that you'd want the hunting to be successful part of the time. And so people are just like, oh, cat's chasing the red dot around. But if you think of play as a hunting experience and wanting them to have the full experience, then it kind of starts to make sense why you wouldn't want that to be the main way you play with your cat.
Yeah. So I guess the answer would kind of be the same about those like iPad games, that the mouse like running across the screen and the cat getting the mouse, that they're also not able to actually grab it or bite it or touch it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, I wouldn't say no. I mean, because you could argue, well, if that's true, then maybe like bird videos are frustrating, or maybe watching a bird from the catio is frustrating. And, each cat is an individual. And so I always, encourage people to make sure your cat isn't showing signs of stress, like, crying and over grooming or hiding or anything, like can't do anything except stare out the window looking for the light. So use it in moderation. And it's interesting, my cat who has the laser obsession, she's also the most interested in stuff on TV. So she really likes ASMR videos, like dominoes and like balls moving in tracks and stuff. So, and also videos of people playing video games. So she's just, I think her brain's wired a little differently than her sister's because she really likes visual. She's a little weirdo, but that's Ruby. So she's got her quirks.
That's awesome. One of my cats weirdly always responds to cartoon animals on the TV.
Oh, interesting.
Like, more than real ones. Like we could put
Simon's cat. Have you tried Simon's cat? Because my cat loves Simon's cat.
No, but like if I'm watching, I don't know, The Lion King or The Hound, he's like staring at it like, oh, this is so magical. But then I put on a bird video and he's like, no. Like cartoon animals only? I don't know.
Yeah, there was a study that I don't know if it's been published yet, but I talked to one of the authors of a study of dogs and what they watch on TV. They show them videos of different things, and they most like to watch videos of dogs, which is kind of cute.
That is cute.
Anyway.
So I mentioned that we have 6 cats. So our play sessions are usually group sessions. Is that how you would advise someone to play with multiple cats? Should they have a group play session or should they separate it out and do one cat at a time? What's the best way?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way is whatever way ensures that every cat has a free opportunity to play. And one thing I hear in multi-cat households is, oh, Felix likes to play and Fluffy just likes to watch. And most of the time, what that means is Felix is a toy hog and
Mm,
Fluffy doesn't really want to get in the fray. So Fluffy's just kicking back and is kind of like too intimidated or like just not interested in like dealing with Felix. So I think there's like I mean, 6 cats is a lot, and I wouldn't be like, oh, you need to play with each of your 6 cats for an hour separately. With my 3 cats, they do get along, and we typically set up like 2 play areas. So we have at our house, we have spontaneous play throughout the day because my partner and I both work from home. But we also have every day after dinner, we kind of reserve 20 to 30 minutes for cat play. So we give them, the opportunity to play around the same time each day. And so typically one of us will be like in the living room and the other one of us will be like in our bedroom. And we'll each have like a toy, or maybe we'll have like a couple catnip toys or Silvervine set up. And then we'll have like a ripple rug and maybe some craft paper and, a pile. And so we're both like sharing and splitting who's playing with who, and like, oh, is Coriander playing with you? Okay, good, and I'll come play with Scribbles over here. So I think coordinating is good. So having 2 people or more, like, this is a great opportunity to get like kids involved if you have kids in the home, so that each cat has the opportunity to play. And so I would say, if you have multiple cats, like, try playing with them separately and see if it's different than when you play with them in a group. And if you notice that, whoa, this one cat just goes bananas when he's separated, but he doesn't do anything when we're playing all together, then maybe 5 of your cats are fine playing in a group and one cat needs a little special alone time. So there's some, kind of testing and seeing. Really depends on like the range of their ages and their play styles and how much they like the other cats. So in many cases, I do recommend that people at least try to play separately a couple minutes a day with each cat, just to give them the chance to kind of let loose.
Yeah, one of our cats is really shy and skittish, and we've had him now for 7 years. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's across those 7 years, I mean, he's still coming out of his shell more and more.
Yeah.
And play has helped a lot. But like you said,
Mm-hmm.
he is that cat who, in a group play session, he is kind of hanging back and watching,
Yeah.
because my other ones, they're jumping around and being crazy.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like, oh gosh, that's a little too much. But if I play with
Yeah.
him by himself, then he's way more active. And
Yep.
not only does playing by himself give him the opportunity to play, but it also is a bonding experience for me and him together.
Yes.
And it
Yeah.
helps bring him out of his shell and feel even more comfortable. So
Yeah.
from personal
No, that's
experience,
a really
I can,
important point.
yeah.
Yeah, like the bonding part is really important because some cats are really shy or they're not very cuddly, and so you're kind of trying to figure out ways to connect with them. And I think for some cats, play is a really great way. So that's nice that you've observed that. And I love play for shy cats. It really is a confidence booster. And
Yeah.
shy cats are a special category because they really, they're you have to do a lot to earn their trust, but when you earn it, you really did earn it, and they're just sweet. So I have a lot of empathy for shy cats, and I really enjoy working with them and kind of watching how they blossom very slowly over time.
Yeah. Well, down to our last couple questions. So you mentioned you have siblings, right? And they play together, I imagine, some. And that's why also you recommend for people when they get a kitten to get a second one, so they play together, entertain each other. But sometimes cats, when they're fighting, it can sometimes look like play, and it can be hard
Sure.
for us as humans to make that differentiation. Are my cats playing or are they fighting? How can we tell the difference?
Yeah, this question comes up a lot, and the first thing I always want to know is, well, what is the cat's relationship like when they're not playing, right? So if the people are like, oh, they never hang out, they're just always like, uh, on opposite ends of the house, or they only like they never interact any other way. Every time they see each other, they're like wrestling. I'm like, okay, those cats are not friends. So we're always looking for signs of friendship. So that would be cats who like sleep touching and cuddle each other or groom each other, approach each other with their tails up. Those are cats who are choosing to be friendly with one another and not just roommates. Other cats, so if there's a lot of wrestling or rough looking play, then we're looking at things like, is it inhibited? So, if you tossed a ping pong ball across the room, would they stop playing and look like, oh, what was that? Or would they keep like, oh no, I'm still going at this? And play tends to be silent, so you might hear the occasional like meow, but you're not going to hear that horrible screaming. So like it like kind of prolonged vocalizations and screaming would be not play. Play is mutual, so it should be like one cat chases the other, and then you look and they've switched roles, and the cat who was chasing is now the chasee, right? So there's a lot of mutualism in play that we do not see in fighting. And of course, then we're thinking about things like injuries and how inhibited are they. So, play can get pretty rough, especially if you've got two young cats. They will wrestle and kick the crap out of each other. But you should see, like, then they should like roll over and they're like cuddling after, and then okay, they're fine. So, it can be in many cases that one cat is playing, but it's not play to the other cat. So you could see like one cat, their intentions seem very playful, but the other cat does not take it that way. So it's not always like a mutual agreement as to what is happening between the cats. And that's where I think a lot of people get confused, because one cat's like, this is great, I love jumping on this other cat. And the other cat is like, I hate this. Like, why did you bring this brat into my house? So you do have to kind of assess multiple things. But I'd say, are they otherwise friends? Is it quiet? Are they distractible? Are they inhibited? Probably play.
Yeah, makes sense. In my multi-cat household, I can definitely say there's some of both.
Yeah, and sometimes, just like we have squabbles with our friends or siblings or partners, they sometimes have squabbles too, and they, sometimes recover.
Yeah. So besides play, what are some other ways that we can engage with our cats to keep them active, both mentally and physically?
Yeah, I love clicker training. I love food puzzles. I love nosework. If you haven't checked out noseworkcats.com, that's a great website.
Yeah, I've had Hannah on my show.
Oh,
she's
perfect. She's amazing. Yeah, I love Hannah. So, obviously, harness walking can be great for some cats. I like, anything having to do with like cooperative care. But, some cats really love grooming. Other cats don't. But really, there's really the limit is just the human's interest and imagination. Like, I think training can be really, really fun and rewarding, and you can kind of do very simple, practical things like train your cat to go in a carrier, or you can train your cat to do cool tricks, right? So you can kind of take it where you want to. I do think that all of these things are important to me. Having a cat and living with them and giving them the best life possible is really doing a lot of trial and error and seeing what they respond to, and trying to just make their life as fun as possible. So yeah, and the other thing I'll just say is olfactory enrichment. So catnip and silvervine for many cats, valerian, honeysuckle, those are all things that many cats find quite pleasurable and can be also a good supplement to play.
Yeah, and those can be found like dried, like catnip kind of, right?
Yeah.
Like dried herbs. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think Meowana is my favorite. They have all those different blends.
Yeah. No, they're great. I like From the Field. There's lots more companies. A couple of years ago, nobody knew what silvervine is, and now I'm very pleased that most people have tried it with their kitties. So, yeah, there's lots of ways to have fun with your cat.
Yeah. And variety is the spice of life, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, and sometimes I have my clients set up an enrichment calendar where they set a different activity for every day just to kind of pre-plan. So it could be, Tuesday is like cardboard box of tissue paper day, and Wednesday is catnip bubble day, and Thursday's a new food puzzle, and Friday's a new trick, so it's just kind of helping them set up enrichment for their cats that's kind of really encompasses lots of different domains.
I love that. That's a fun idea.
Yeah.
Enrichment calendar. I think we could use that as humans sometimes too.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, do you have any final words of wisdom or advice that you'd like to share about play? And for those that are watching, if you have any final questions for Michael, you can drop them in the comments.
Yeah, I mean, words of wisdom, I don't know. I'm not the wisest person, but I would just say, like, don't be afraid to try things and learn from your successes and failures. Like, be a scientist and just see what your cat likes, what they don't like. And really just try to have empathy for your cat. I think that, like I said, we're kind of keeping them, in a restricted life, and so it's our responsibility to try to make that life as full as possible, and also meet their emotional needs. They have emotional needs, and really just enjoy your companions. Like, they're so fun and cute, and just, yeah. I think you all probably know what I mean. I'm just getting all like kitty love right now, but they're the best. They're just the best.
They are. They are.
That's my words of wisdom. Cats are the best.
Hey, I think it's a pretty good word of wisdom. Well, thank you so much, Michael. This has been really great. If people are wanting to see more of you, learn more from you, I know they can find you on Instagram at Mikel.Delgado and your website, mikeldelgado.com. Do you have anywhere else you would like to send people?
No, I think if you go to those two places, you can find. I do a blog, whatyourcatwants.com. So that's I mostly blog about scientific research about cats, so non-invasive studies of cat behavior, and I read the science, I translate the science, explain to you what the scientists did and why it's interesting, and so again, I like communicating about science. But now Instagram is where I'm most active, and so yeah, follow me and say hi.
And you said the other website was whatyourcatwants.com?
That is correct.
Very cool. Well, this was great. Thank you so much. We've got some people chiming in the comments. Thank you for the great tips. Thank you for doing this. Have a great evening. This really has been really informative and fun. I've had a lot of fun talking with you.
Yeah, me too. No, really nice talking to you, and thanks everybody for the great questions.
Yeah. Well, thank you also to viewers for watching with us tonight, for sharing your stories and your comments, asking your questions. Be sure to mark your calendars for the next episode of Kitty Cat Go Live, which will be Wednesday, June 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. My guest is Mary, who's the human behind the Instagram account Miss Rigby Boat Cat. They live full-time on a sailboat, and so she's going to be sharing her knowledge and advice for boat living with cats, because I know there's many tips and tricks and things to keep a cat entertained and catify a boat. So I'm looking forward.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. So looking forward to hearing from her. But that's it for tonight. Be sure to hit the follow button if you're watching on Facebook, and the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, so you don't miss future episodes and happenings here at Kitty Cat Go. Thanks again for being here, Michael, and viewers, and I hope you learned something new and had something fun, or had some fun.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.